I got fired. And so for a lot of time, I just focused on getting fired. I'm a has been. I'm a never was. I guess my life is over. And then, I gradually started building a new life by telling the story in a new way.
Welcome to another episode of Around the Wake podcast, where we help you get around your obstacles so that you can find a way to redesign your life. We are here with somebody, I feel like a friend, my guy Stuart. Such an accomplished man. How are you doing, Stuart?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
I'm a little intimidated. I told you that.
No.
You're my coach.
No. Don't be intimidated at all. This man has really more than just inspired me to be better. He's provided me with a lot of insight. It's kind of like when you're getting coached, you don't realize that like you're learning as the coach, so you have so much wisdom, you have so many accomplishments, and I'm just so excited about this episode. Can you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you've accomplished, what you've done, who you are as a man, and let's get rolling.
Sure. My name is Stuart Watson, but I had 3 names before I was 6 months old. That's the main thing you need to know. I was born to a single mom in Macon, Georgia, and I became instantly a little white welfare baby. I was born into foster care, and I was adopted at 4 months of age. And the most important things you need to know about me is that, and the fact that my biological father, who I never met, was an alcoholic, and I became an alcoholic. And then ultimately, I became, by profession, an investigative reporter. And I used those investigative reporting skills to find my birth family, my original family, who was, in the wind. And then I discovered that my full-blood brother was an alcoholic and my full-blood sister was an alcoholic. And so that pictured the whole genetic thing. But when you and Kiana were talking in the podcast I listened to about stories, there's the story we tell ourselves, and then there's the story we discover. So I could tell you a lot of stories. Like for a long time, I would say, I flunked out of college and I dropped out of college. And both of those things are true, but I would never tell you I went back and graduated from college. I would only focus on the losses. In business world, they say, look at the gains, not the gaps. Look at the gains, not the gaps. And what you said, Kiana, is let's look at the lessons, not the losses. There's no such thing as a loss. There's no such thing as a failure. So I had a wonderful, successful career of more than 30 years, 10 Emmys, 3 Peabodys, a fellowship at Harvard,
Receipts.
Right.
Exactly. But then I got fired. And so for a lot of time, I just focused on getting fired. I'm a has been. I'm a never was. I guess my life is over. And then, I gradually started building a new life by telling the story in a new way. That now I'm going to pivot. Now I'm going to do something else. Write a book, do a podcast, maybe do a documentary. Maybe if Kyle will help me, if Kyle will agree to help me, learn how to find formats to pass along some of the things that I've learned along the way. And that's what I'm working with you on right now, is trying to learn how to pass this on. Some of it for free and for fun. Some of the best information will be for free and for fun. And then ultimately, still got to put food on the table.
Exactly.
My wife is not getting her podcaster discount at the Harris Teeter. She keeps telling her that her husband is just a famous podcaster, and they're like, yeah, that's still going to be $89.
This is great. This is so great. So, and like you said, so much packed in like your introduction. Like you usually went to the dropout story versus the graduation story. You talked about the losses versus all of these different things. You talked about where you came from versus like what you've done. You're an inspiration. Like just imagine that, you could go to any foster care home and provide them with hope. You could go to any welfare office and provide them with hope. You could go to any college dropout and provide them with hope. And your book is absolutely amazing, and it's sitting right here in front of me. And it, what she said and what I heard, how one man shut up and started listening. It's a powerful story, but I believe that this book does nothing to explain how you are as a man. And I think your integrity, your resiliency, your character, as a father, as a husband, all of the different things that you've been able to accomplish internally, I think that's the story that has inspired, us so much. And that's why we're here today. So I know that Kiana probably has a whole bunch of questions, but we're going to get started with something. We're going to twist it up a little bit. So we have the red box. We want you to grab the red box and grab a question out of it.
Uh-oh.
Read it. And then I want you to answer it for us.
I'm unprepared for this. Should I close my eyes? I just close my eyes and grab one.
Just one.
I grabbed two. Okay, here we go. It says, what do you think your biggest weakness is? When you tell me these things, I don't see that person. Like I don't see myself as other people see me. And so I consistently, and this is what I'm working with you on, I'll keep my mouth shut when I should contribute. And sometimes I'll talk when I should be silent. Everybody's familiar with that. But sometimes I'm silent when I should be speaking. So whether you want to call that like a lack of confidence, there's a certain lack of self-awareness there. Like when you force me to say, tell me your accomplishments, it makes me profoundly uncomfortable. Wow. I don't like, because I don't consider it to be my accomplishment. It's like God gave me gifts. I tried to use them. Sometimes it worked, a lot of times it didn't. I don't feel like the ego wants to take credit, and I am more comfortable telling you, really like make up weaknesses than I am, which is almost like humble bragging, than I am accepting accolades. I'm not comfortable when you say that.
So I have a question, because I feel like in some ways I understand what you're saying. Like we talk about this a lot, the responsibility that you feel when you feel that God has bestowed something upon you and then you need to bring it to fruition. But do you not feel any sort of sense of accomplishment that you accomplished that if he gave you these gifts and his intention was for you to use them to create something bigger than you, that you did that?
The way I look at it and the way I frame it is I use a different word.
Okay.
Gratitude.
Okay.
I'm overwhelmingly grateful because I didn't choose to be born, in a certain circumstance to a certain person. I didn't choose my mom and dad that adopted me. I didn't choose, the foster care for the first 4 months of my life. And I feel like I didn't even choose my wife. I just instantly fell in love with her. Aww. And we've been together for 40 years. 40 years worth of her telling me, don't do that, put that down. And we had 4 children together, and so even my career, I kind of fell into it. I was waiting tables, at a restaurant, and people from the TV station would come into the restaurant, and I said, hey, can I do an internship? And they said, you can work for free as much as you want. And I said, great. And so I went up there and I worked like 40 hours a week for free. And it was how I kind of fell into things. I've always fallen into things. Like The first time we won a Peabody Award, it was because our boss said, I want you to go and look at this. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, yeah, we'll do it anyway. And then we win this major award, which is kind of like the Pulitzer for TV. And I said, let the record reflect that you pushed for quality every step of the way, and I fought you every time. Like I was forced into these things. I don't feel like I can take any credit for it. I really don't.
Wow.
Well, I just feel like whenever I hear someone talk about falling into things, I think this happens to you a lot. You fall into a lot of stuff.
A lot of things.
But what I hear is God has given favor over your life. And so again, I think it's a shift in perspective, like that there is, again, like some sort of responsibility, that you utilize that, because there is probably someone else that is working really, really hard to get the things that you've received favor over. And I feel like that should be a boost in confidence to you, that God chose you. Like, you might not have chosen all of these things for you, but he chose you. He saw you fit before you could even talk. That he set up this string of events that would bring you to like where you are now. Like you've already lived somebody else's dream. Like
Multiple times.
Yeah.
There are the circumstances, right, which we can all describe, and then there's what the story we tell about the circumstances. I mean, for instance, one of my best buddies, right now, his two business partners just abandoned him and went into business competing with him. Just said, peace out. While he was on vacation with the family, they said, peace out. And by the way, here's our website, and we're competing with you immediately starting today. And what I'm trying to get him to say is, dude, this all goes in the book. This all goes in the film. I said, this all is just, I said, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, you're going to be saying, thank God they left.
Exactly.
Because I never would have pivoted without that. And the getting fired in my book, if you read that chapter, I rewrote it and rewrote it. I was angry and angry and angry. For 5 years, I was so angry. I sued them. And I vowed never to go back in that business again. And I won't, because it's not healthy for me, because I needed to pivot. I needed to move. But the way I put it is, whether you want to call it God or fate or synchronicity, it had to bang on every knuckle.
Yeah.
It had to whack on every knuckle, because if my pinky knuckle could have clung to that job, I would have clung to it. If they had said, we're going to cut your pay in half, I would have said, thank you, sir. Can I have another? If they would have said, I want you to work twice as much for half the money, I would have said, thank you, sir. Can I have another? It was only when they said, listen, there's nothing you can do. You are fired. Pack your stuff. Get out. It was only when they were, adamant about it. If they'd have been one bit more fair, one bit more nice, one bit more honest, I'd be standing beside the road telling you, it's going to rain. Live in fear. It's going to rain this afternoon. We're going to have wind. You might be killed by a tornado today. I would be living in the industry of fear, as opposed to what you do, which is the industry of hope, the industry of opportunity, the industry of advancement. Because there's a huge world of media out there right now that is living. You can listen to it, the drumbeat, 24/7. You are doomed. I'm sorry. I'm tired of that. I'm 62 years old. I ain't got time for that. I'm going to be dead soon. I got to do something with my remaining days. I'm not that good a bass fisherman, I'm not that good a golfer. My putting game is for nothing. I don't want to retire. I want to give, like you talk about. I want to keep giving. And I just got to figure out how. You going to help me? You going to help me?
You know it. This
you're already helping me.
This is so rich, because I think about, wow, I could take this so many different ways. And I literally have like chills, like as you were talking, because I think about so many people are not willing to like, we get so excited. We get so excited when, it's the NCAA championships or, the tournament now. We get so excited when our team scores. We get so excited when, we see a touchdown, when we see all these different things. We get so excited for our teams, and we cling to our jobs. We cling to our relationships. We cling to our cars and to our houses. And I know you're a very spiritual person, but do we get excited for God? Like, do we cling to our faith just as much as we cling to things that don't really ever cling to us, right? So I love what you said about, if your pinky could have stayed right there, you would have still been there. And if you would have still been there by the pinky, you wouldn't be sitting here.
That's right.
If you would have been there, you wouldn't have given all of the people hope that you've given hope. And it's interesting because this is what I want to change your perspective. I feel it in me to just say this. You may have not seen the revenue yet from you speaking on your podcast, and your wife may not have the discount at Harris Teeter yet, but all of the people that you have touched, all of the people that have listened to your voice, all of the people that will listen to this, all of the people that will see this online, they're doing the silent work. So I don't want you to see your success, right, your accolades as attached to revenue. I want you to see it as all of the people that you are literally, like, you have an anointing on you. I really believe it. And, we try to steer away from these conversations because,
I don't know what
people are
that
people,
means, but
right. And what she said, like, you have favor over you, like you have like something
God
truly
has
big
chosen you.
that you have to do. And just because we don't see, a lot of times we move away because we don't see the revenue, or we don't see the profit, or we don't see the big business with our name on it. But if you look at any true leader, those weren't the wealthiest people, but they were the most impactful. And I truly believe, Stuart, that, when we look 30 years from now, 40, 50 years from now, your name's going to stay here. And people are going to remember the different things that you've communicated, the books that you've written, the talks that you've given, and who you were as the man. And I truly believe that this is great, but if we can give him a nickname, I think you're the Hope Doctor. And I really believe that you have something inside of you, and once you look in the mirror and see it, I believe that's going to change the game. What are you thinking, Kiana?
I think my question, I understand that so many people have trouble with confidence, and I see that in you. I'm wondering where it's stemming from. Do you feel like there are pieces of your past that you haven't let go of that make you feel that you're not necessarily worthy of the things that you've accomplished?
It's very difficult. If you experience trauma in any form, okay, it could be sexual abuse, it could be witnessing a terrible accident, it could be whatever. If you experience a trauma, people experience it in different ways,
Right.
and the trauma requires resilience, and some people naturally have more resilience to trauma. And so even if you have identical twins, they experience it in different ways.
Right.
And when you say, as you said so brilliantly, there's what happens to you and there's what happens for you. Well, what happened to me was I was separated from my mother on day one. Like, I never knew my mother. Well, that happens to a fair number of people. The mother dies, or for whatever circumstance, the child is not with
Right.
the parent, right? My story that I told myself as a little bitty kid was, you're a burden, not a blessing. You're somebody's burden. You're somebody's problem. And the world would be better off without you. And once you have that narrative written in your heart, you go forth and act it out. And it takes something really profound, like on the order of a complete psychic change, a complete change of spirit, a rebirth, as we talk about, a complete, it takes something really big to shift that story.
Right.
And I find it, to this day, difficult to accept that, difficult to bring that in, take that on. People will say, hey, you published a book, let that land. Or they'll say, you've done 50 episodes every week. You've done 52 episodes. You've finished a year. Let that land. Just take that in. And I have a hard time with that. I have a hard time with that. I am trying. I'm working at that. But until you sort of accept these gifts, it's like I was in a 12-step meeting one day, and there was a guy, a buddy of mine, and he works 3 jobs to support his son, right? He's working on the weekends, working late at night, working. And the guy comes by me, and I'd just been fired, and he shoves a $20 bill in my hand. I was looking down. I'm like looking at my shoes, and he shoves a $20 bill in my hand. And he said, take yourself to lunch, man. He said, enjoy that. Now, everything in me wanted to say, you need that $20 more than I need it. But the hardest thing in the world that I've had to learn is when someone gives you a compliment, you say thank you.
Exactly.
You say thank you to them, and you say thank you, God. You say thank you. Because that overrides everything in me wants to say, man, I don't need you. What am I, some charity case? Here, you take your $20. You know, instead of saying, thank you, I appreciate this, I'm going to enjoy it. And then what happened was I hired that man to clean my driveway and detail my car and cut my grass. And I paid him many hundreds of dollars because he's my friend. You know, I mean, we have a relationship that transcends any kind of business thing. But what I learned from that was just override your ego's instinct to throw his money back at him and just say thank you and take it in.
I think that's such a great lesson. And, you know, it's lost in this generation, just gratitude in general and being able to just receive.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like our ego sometimes prevents us from letting other people or letting God use other people. So if you, like, God may have been working through that man to, you know, bring a blessing to you, which would in turn bring a blessing back to him. But if you had this ego, you know, kick and you're like, no, like, take it, whatever, it prevents him from being able to do God's work too. So I think it's just important that perspective.
Yeah. Other people who use different words for God will say, Stuart, you are blocking energy. That energy wants to flow. Like light wants to shine, energy wants to flow. Water, just like water, it just wants to flow. So your job, I mean, what's the St. Francis prayer? It's let me be an instrument. Let me be a channel or a conduit. I'm reading a book right now, which is Eastern, and it says, the name of the book says it all. It's not your money. It's not your money. You're there to let go what you need to let go of, to spend what you need to spend, and to bring in what you need to bring in. It's all going through you anyway. You know, it may go through you when you die. It's going to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And so you just need to stop blocking this. If somebody offers to hand you money, let them hand you money. You know, if it's a transaction, do your best to give them exactly what you said you'd give them for the money. If they're just giving you the money, let them give you the money and use it to good, you know, use it to good purpose. Don't be Scrooge McDuck and sit in the bank vault and just, you know, run around setting Benjamins on fire and throwing them in the air, you know. Use it to good purpose. It's energy. It's just like a battery. It's just like a battery. It's just energy. Use that battery. Don't just let it just sit on the counter and then go dead, you know. And what is that? You know, you're a student of the Scripture. It's the parable of the talents. Exactly. You're given talents, use them. Use them, and they'll come back to you, and there'll be more of them. If you bury them in a hole, if you sit that battery on the counter and let it stay there for 10 years, it's going to go dead. You might as well use it. You might as well use this energy. That's what I'm talking about.
This is good. This is good, Stuart. I knew it would be. I knew it would be. So I want to transition really quickly. So we're going to go on a commercial break.
Okay.
So we are back from our commercial break, back to the Around the Way podcast. Where we left off was just talking about the importance of allowing energy or allowing, blessings that God is trying to bestow upon you through other people to manifest themselves, essentially, just to keep balance, I feel like, in the world.
It's interesting that you said that, Stuart, because I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Greg, the other day, and he literally called me. He was like, bro, guess what just happened? Guess what just happened? And I was like, what, Greg? He was like, I just looked at my account, and I have an additional $4,000 deposit in my account. And then he's going through all of these different things on, like, why this is wrong. He was like, I may have deposited the business money into my personal account. Like, somebody may have mistakenly did this, or I may get in trouble, and all these different. And I'm like, Greg, just receive it, bro. Like, just receive it, because we talk so much on, receiving blessings and doing God's work. And, he was like, what is it called when somebody randomly puts money into your account? And then we're trying to go through it and Google it. And I was like, Greg, just say thank you. And just say thank you, like pray and just say thank you. Like, and then he goes and he was like, calls the bank and they're like, no, like this, like it was a really like a legitimate deposit. And I think so many times we ask for blessings, we pray for them, we receive them, then we question them. Like, we receive it and then we question everything, but it's like, this is what you asked for. You were obedient. I gave it to you. So why are you questioning it?
I think a lot of times we don't think that we're deserving of the things that we're even asking for, or the things that we're desiring. That, like, remember I said this one time, like, we believe that happiness, goodness, and like blessings are reserved for other people a lot of times. And so then once we get it, it's like, this doesn't belong to me. Like, I could imagine if this happened to you, but for it to happen to me, something has to be off, And
we do like, and here I'm not the student, but we do like Jonah. Not me. You don't need me. It's not me. You need somebody else. You need somebody better.
Exactly.
Right.
Listen, I'm busy. I'm busy. It's not me. The other thing I was thinking when you talked, I don't want to leave that. How many times, like I have I'm doing a children's book. And I'm translating it into Spanish, so I've hired a really professional translator. That's a $600 bill to translate the book that I owe. I'm going to owe it next month. I got a phone call a few weeks ago with a new digital publication, and they said, hey, we want you to write an op-ed piece. We want you to write a personal opinion piece. Pays $600.
Wow.
How often does that happen? And we're like, well, that's a coincidence. That's an interesting coincidence. I got the bill coming due, and they're putting the money in my bank account tomorrow.
Wow.
And if you don't look at that, Stuart,
right?
Like,
favor.
Come on, somebody's helping me out here. Wow, that's deep.
Yeah,
that is.
That's deep.
And that's not the only time something like that has happened.
I'm not surprised. You have favor. I'm telling you, you have favor. When that happens, just be like, Kiana told me I had favor.
Okay. I'm writing it down.
So I do have a question because, I'd be remiss if we missed this or if we kind of just went over it. So you are like the king of listening, right? You are Mr. Listener. Or the professor of listening.
That's the brand. Anyway. Don't ask my wife.
No, I know, right? Can you talk a little bit more about Man Listening, your brand, and just give us some keys on listening in general?
Sure. Listening is at once an art. We talk about the art of listening. It's very practical. It's the way to seal a business deal. Right, is to listen, not to talk. And also it's a spiritual gift, right? You're giving someone the gift. How often when someone dies, if my mother dies, people don't know what to say, so they'll come and they'll talk, and they'll keep talking. And it's exhausting, right? As opposed to saying, just going to a really good friend whose mother just died and just sitting there and listening to them. talk about her, talk about what they're experiencing, talk about whatever they need to talk about. They might need to talk about March Madness when Mother just died. Talk about March Madness with them, just to be there, to, as people say, hold space, just to be there. So my experience was I had one entire career talking, right, as a TV reporter. All I did was talk. My kids say, Dad, you talk too loud. I said, well, it put food on your table. It got you to college, okay? So I spent one whole career talking, and then I took one of these personality tests, the online tests. It's kind of like the Myers-Briggs to determine what your strengths are, what your personality is like. It said I was an excellent empathic listener. Wow. And so I turned to my wife of 40 years and I said, look, honey, it says here, your husband is an excellent empathic listener. And she said, sweetheart. She's from upstate New York. I'm from downstate Georgia, right? She said, sweetheart, you are not an empathic listener. And so I said, well, I'll prove her wrong. I'll record, right, these interviews or conversations with women, and I'll show her what an excellent listener I was. I listened back to it. Terrible listener. She was 100% right. So I said, listening is a skill. So if I practice it, I can get better. And so I began learning through recording the podcast, which are nothing but one-on-one conversations with women every week. You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Okay, Kiana. Hey, don't say unless you mean it, because I do. And it was to talk to not celebrities or, Beyonce hadn't called. I'm still sitting by the phone. Michelle Obama, Oprah lost my number. Something's wrong. My phone's not taking Oprah's call. But I talk to people that I know, and some of them might be, there's an obstetrician here in town that I talk to. It might be, somebody who's a business person. I talk to a lot of people in recovery. I talk to a lot of people who were adopted as children, because just those are my peeps. Yeah. But I've talked to people in Santa Monica, California, and in Harlem, and in Tampa, and in Houston, and in, all over the place. And talk to people talk to people up on Lake Norman, sitting on the dock. Wow. Talk to people sitting in the co-working space. I most like to talk to people sitting on the couch in their home. I say, sit in the seat where not even the cat can sit there. That's your seat. And I'll sit opposite you, and I just ask as few questions as possible to just get them talking. And then we just talk, and it goes all kind of crazy ways. It really does.
He's like, literally, he's asked some questions, and even we've talked, and he's like, oh, ask this question. He asked the best probing questions.
Really?
Literally. Could you give us one?
Ask me a question.
Okay. I'll ask you a question. For purposes of understanding you, not them, but you, what should I know about your mom and dad to understand you?
To understand me. Okay, so my parents have been married for 34 years. They met as teenagers. My mom never really worked. So she...
What do you mean she didn't work?
So my dad was in the military. So we traveled a lot. She didn't have like a job for most of my life outside of the home.
She didn't work for money.
Right.
Who did the laundry?
She did.
Who put the food on the table?
She did until recently. She don't like cooking them.
Who changed the diapers?
She did, and she taught me.
That sounds like work.
Summer. She did. She did. And so a lot of my ideas about like what I would want in second grade, I said I wanted to be a housewife when they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. So, yeah.
Are you a mom?
No.
You want to be a housewife still?
I would like, ideally, yeah.
How old are you?
27.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
And how is that now to have that in the back of your mind? Like, what is it like? Like, how do you see yourself now? How is the impact of your mother manifesting itself now? Like, how will you be similar to her and different from her?
That's a Great question. So it manifests itself in pretty much all things that I do, I would say. And the core of me would still want to be a housewife. I would like to be very active in raising children and caring for my husband, supporting him, and all of those things. The way that we differ is that my mom didn't go to college. Neither of my parents did. So it was very important to both of them, especially my mom, that I graduated from college, which I did. It's also very important to her that I can support myself because she never felt like she could. And so it's important for me to be successful or to at least be able to support myself because that is something that she has like instilled that in me.
A sense of independence.
Yeah, just so that you're not relying on a man.
Mm.
So that if anything ever goes crazy, he starts talking to you crazy or whatever, you can go on about your business and you don't have to.
Even though their relationship worked.
Right. But she believes that she is an anomaly.
Mm.
And that maybe I think with all people, if things were different, maybe things would be different. Mm-hmm. You know, like maybe if she had an education, like an advanced education, or maybe if she didn't start having children at 19 or get married at 19, like if those things had been different, maybe things would be different. It worked out, but you never know, you know?
What do couples fight about? They fight about control, you know? And my wife and I were this traditional relationship that you describe, even though we're different in a lot of ways than your parents. It was the traditional relationship. And my wife did go to college. She graduated ahead of me, you know, and she had better grades and in a lot of ways was better positioned. But she very much wanted to be a mother, just like you did. And she chose that. But she chose it at tremendous cost.
Right, right.
And to this day, when we have an argument about, like, I spent $600 on this jacket. Feel this jacket.
It feels really soft.
I know.
Yeah.
It's bamboo silk. It's
really
wonderful.
soft.
And does it look good?
It does.
Okay. All right. And so I totally justify, and I ran it through the business. And she said, Stuart, the business is all coming out of our money right now. And so we get in this squabble about money. And what it's really about is respect.
Yes.
Is respect. That, you know, I told you don't be spending $600 on a jacket, and I did it anyway. And it's about respect. And what she will say is, you didn't listen to me. And I'm like, I listened to you. I just didn't do what you told me to do, you know? And so this is 40 years in. We're in our 60s. We're gray-haired old people. We're having the same discussion, you know, about what does respect mean? What is work? What ought we be doing? How can we do what we're here to do? You know, what's most important for me to do? You know, and I keep asking that question. You know, I ask that on the daily.
Wow. So I guess my question for you is, you know, anybody listening in right now, what would be your advice or techniques that you would give them to become better listeners?
Well, it's just like speaking. You know, when we're little kids, we might be getting in front of the class as kindergartners and explaining our piece of art, right? Like we color or we finger paint or whatever, and we get in, so we're taught speaking, but we're not taught to listen. And I think listening is really, really simple. It is, did I look you in the eye? Did I stop what I was doing and respond to what you're saying? Or did I keep looking at my phone, keep looking at my computer screen, stare out the window, stare at in our culture, in the Western culture, if you want to show that you're listening, you look someone in the eye.
Exactly.
And you don't look away. Like I don't look at him, I don't look at the camera, I look at you. So I look someone in the eye. I call this the last listening lesson you'll ever need because it's THE last. It's take a beat, hear, do I hear what they're saying? Expect to hear something new. That's just Kyle. He's just going to be saying the same thing. He's going to say, I might as well watch the game. Okay. Take a beat. That's T. Hear. Do I actually hear what they're saying? Expect. E. Expect to hear something new. And then LAST. Look them in the eye. L. A. Ask open-ended questions. What did you mean by that? I didn't hear that. I don't understand. What do you mean by being, a blessing? What does that word mean from you? Work. What does the word work mean for you? Okay, so ask. That's L-A as for ask. Then S is for silence. That means just sit in silence. You don't have to be talking all the time. If their mother died, just go and sit with them. Just sit with them. You're going to want to fill that silence because it's uncomfortable. Don't. Just sit. Don't keep talking. Just sit. And they'll talk to you. And then T is exactly what Kiana's doing. Take notes. Take a couple of notes, and that way I want to ask him about that. But I'm not going to see, she's polite. I'm not polite. I'll jump in. She'll take a note, and then she'll go, I want to circle back to that. I want to ask about that.
Wow. That's good.
That is good. That's good. Really good.
I like it. What are your thoughts?
No, I think this has been a really great conversation. It really is. Yeah, I think just in what you're talking about, listening, I think you're able to have more fruitful conversations because we didn't come into this we want to talk about this and this and this. And it doesn't, I know a lot of times when when you're coming on as a guest, it's I have an agenda to talk about this, this, and this. And I know I want to touch on my book and I want to touch on this. It doesn't seem like you did that either. And so it felt like we came into a situation where everybody just kind of wanted to see where the conversation went.
Exactly.
They're much more interesting that way.
Yeah.
Definitely. This is great. So I guess my final question for you, what is, if this was the first time you meeting someone, what would you want them to know about you? And that if this was the first time and the last time of you meeting someone, what would you need them to know about you?
They don't really need to know anything about me other than I was curious about them. I mean, I don't really need to impress anything on anybody. I mean, I'd just rather know about what's going on with them. People, I don't care if it's the cashier at the 7-Eleven. They appreciate. The cashier, when I went into the falafel shop, the kebab shop the other day, I noticed that they have pamphlets. What is the Quran? And I'm like, oh, the owners of the falafel shop are Muslim. So I find that a lot of times I'll say, are you Muslim? And they might say, sure. And I'd say, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does that look like? Do you go to the mosque on Fridays? And I talked to a woman, her mother was Pakistani, her father's Indian. And I said, and she said, yeah, I'm Muslim. And I said, do you go to the mosque on Friday? She goes, no. So she considers herself Muslim, but she doesn't go. And so all of a sudden it opens this window. Like if someone says to me, I'm a Christian, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? It might mean I need to watch my wallet. it might mean that they believe in being kind. I don't know. Okay, what? All right. Okay, what does that mean? All right. I'm really kind of more interested in them because I get bored of me.
I think that's so powerful what you said, though, Stuart. How you leave an impression isn't about communicating who you are, but it's about creating an experience by being interested in who somebody else is. Mm-hmm. I know you have thoughts.
I just have one more question. So in listening to you just now, something I don't know, it did something to me. it seems like you are very conscientious of what other people need. Even in the answer to that question about, like, you know, what would people need to know about you? It's like, no, I just want to know about them. Or like, I am looking for cues about things that other people need. What is one thing that you feel like you need that is not being met right now?
Money. No, it's not out of greed. In the last 6 years, I have spent my life savings. I mean, I've spent pretty much the entirety of my 401k in pivoting and doing all this research and interviews and launching all this stuff. And I just can't continue to do that. And so the question that I ask is, you know, I'd be happy to, if I was a Walmart greeter, I'd be the best damn Walmart greeter you ever saw in your life. I mean, I don't know if they have Walmart greeters anymore. I'm not too good to be a Walmart greeter, but I just ask the question, what do I need to be doing? Because I'm also mindful that I don't need just like a job, you know. What I need is, I have this 62 years worth of all this experience. It would seem as though that I can take that and like share it with people. Mm-hmm. You know, there are certain things, and what I'm thinking about is teaching people, sit down with your grandma. Please do it this weekend. Sit down with your grandma and a recorder, an audio recorder, or one of these little cameras, you know, anything that won't intimidate her. And just ask her, where were you born? Where were you in the birth order? Tell me about your brothers and sisters. What kind of house did y'all live in? Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your father. Tell me about how y'all lived. You know, if you lived on the farm, did you ever kill a chicken? You know, did you ever kill a chicken? Oh, I'd never killed a chicken. Or, honey, I kill chicken every Sunday, you know. Or, you know, there was nothing to it, or, I could never catch them, or whatever. There's a story if you just keep asking. And if you record that and make a bunch of copies for all the cousins and everything else, then her voice will live on. Mm. It's more important to record your grandma's voice than it is to write 10 books about her. Mm-hmm. It's much more important to hear her inflection, her tone, her intonation, her personality. It is much more important to do that than it is to write a whole bunch of stuff about her. Mm-hmm. It's much more important to preserve that voice. It's more important than a family portrait. It's more important than any of that stuff. It's more important than the gravestone. And yet, where we spend all this money when somebody dies, gravestone, casket, flowers, all this stuff. Why not just spend just a little bit of money? You know, like spend $200-$300 on a really good audio recorder, like the one you have, like the Zoom or like a little Marantz or something, on a professional audio recorder. Get somewhere where the TV's not on, the kids aren't screaming, the dogs aren't yapping, nobody's got the leaf blower out front or the lawnmower. Just get in a quiet place and just ask her really simple, open-ended questions. You know, where did you go to school? How far did you go to school? What kind of student? What did you love to learn? What did you hate? When you left home, where did you go? Why did you go there? What happened then? You know, I always say, all of journalism is just 3 questions. What happened? How did you feel at that moment? Not how I imagine you felt, but how did you feel at that moment? And what do you think that meant? What happened? How'd you feel about that? And what do you think that meant? Like, what did it mean to you? And you get these amazing stories. These people I've talked to a woman who's 100 years old, and I talked to my little niece who's 9, you know, and you get these amazing stories. And don't wait until grandma's in the nursing home. Do not wait. If she's in the nursing home, that's fine, but I'll tell you, people have strokes and they can't talk. They get dementia. Their memory's not as good. Their speaking is not as good. They stutter or stammer or whatever. Talk to them now, like right now. You got to preserve that, because I talked to my sister, and 2 years later she was dead. And thank God I have that. I have the video and the audio, have multiple copies, and her 3 children all have it now. And so now the story is preserved. You get a sense of her when she was healthy and vibrant, laughing and everything.
Wow. This was powerful, Stuart. This was powerful. And I love that you ended with preserving the story.
Yeah.
Preserving
Y'all
the story.
set that up.
I know, right? This was so rich. Wow. Any of our audience, any of our listeners, what can you do right now to preserve the story in your legacy, in your profession, in your own life? What can you do right now to listen instead of being the first to speak? What can you be doing right now to be grateful and thank people and thank God, your faith, whoever you serve, for the blessings that you continue to receive? What can you do right now to just be more confident and accept that you are exactly where you need to be, and that life isn't happening to you, but life is happening for you to be able to propel you forward? It's Around the Way podcast, and we'll see you guys next episode.
Bye, guys.